welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to have you. We're going to get things started a little bit different than normal today because we have a number of people on the line who are new to the Administrators Council, and we actually have a number of people on the line who are not members. So we're going to take the opportunity to go over some of the benefits that we have available to you this year. And to do that, I'm going to turn the time over to our Administrators Council Chair, who's also the speaker for today's webinar, Connie Ziccarelli.
Well, thank you, Marisa. And I want to introduce Marisa. She is now a part of the PPS office in Alexandria, Virginia. You might remember Danielle was in this position, and we're excited to announce that she had a brand new baby boy, and she is taking care of him, and he is beautiful. I have seen pictures of him. So Marisa has come in and taken up the reins and has done a fabulous job. So thank you so much for putting this together. We put this together for the first of the year, and so far we are riding right along.
But she didn't give me the login.
If you could put your phone on mute, please. So let's talk about the benefits of being a council member. So the private practice section has a part of it, or a section of it, for administrators. And that membership, or being a part of the Administrator Council, is a wealth of knowledge, a great time to network with other administrators that are doing the same kind of work inside of private practices. Plus, as an administrator of a private practice, you need to be on top of your game when it comes to the rules and regulations and managing a business and growing a business in the healthcare environment. So this council, or this section of the private practice section, lets you network with others, get timely information, and we also have an administrator certification program that is offered every year at annual conference. That certification program is 6 modules, and it's done concurrently every year at annual conference. This year it's in the Broadmoor, or Colorado Springs, Colorado. Last year was our largest attendance for a certification program, and we offered that when we were all together in Chicago. So great time for the members of the private of your practice that are not physical therapists to join the association and have the benefits and the knowledge alongside of the licensed physical therapy therapist members. So I'm very excited about this. I'm very passionate about this section. I've been a part of this section since 1995. I have watched us grow. I have watched us come together as an organization and make change at the legislation level. I feel that being a part of this section gives you resources, that gives you a one-up on others that don't get as timely information. So take some time, make sure that you're getting your emails, and Marisa's going to talk about that in a second. And make sure that if you're not a member and you want to become a member, you get that information. And if you have been a member and you need to sign up, every year there's membership due, please make sure that you do that. I look forward to watching this grow and getting even more opportunities to network with other administrators from different parts of the country. Marisa, is there anything you want to add to that?
That's great. I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about how you can access some of the information that we have for you as members of the Administrators Council, the educational opportunities that come, and the networking opportunities that Connie has been talking about are all available on the PPS website. Now, we have launched a new PPS website in the last week, and as administrator council members, some of you are probably finding that you're having a hard time logging in. I just want you to know that we are aware of that issue. A ticket was sent in to our support team a couple days ago, and you should be able to log in by the end of the week. So if you're having an issue with that, just know that it's going to be resolved very soon, and you'll receive information about how to log in. But as you can see on this slide, there's a lot of information here on this page. We have a new online community where you will be able to interact with each other as well as other PPS members. We have an updated membership directory with all the people that attended conference last year and are new to the Administrator Council. You guys are actually able to access that directory and contact each other when you have questions about issues that you might face in your practice that you'd like some advice from another administrator on. You can jump on that directory and contact those people. So I encourage you to jump on the PPS website and take a look at all of the resources that are available to you there. Also, if you are having a hard time getting information from us, or if you feel like you're missing our emails, if you could send an email to us and let us know that hopefully you're getting them because you're on this call, and that means that you received the information about this webinar. But if you feel like you're not receiving the information that you should from the council, or you're not sure that your contact information is correct with us, shoot us an email at privatepracticesection@apta.org, or all of you have my email as well. Again, my name is Marisa Bergen. You should have received an email from me this morning about the webinar. You can email me and just say, hey, can you make sure my contact information is correct and make sure that my membership is up to date, and I'll be happy to verify that for you. All right. Anything else to add, Connie, before we jump into the...
I think that that's covered it all, but I do encourage everybody to reach out to this email and just be sure that your membership is up to date and that we have everything that we would need to contact you to make sure that we haven't missed anybody. So I really encourage everybody to do that, just to double check.
Wonderful. Thank you. Before we get started with the webinar, I'm going to review a few housekeeping items. I think most of you have called in at this point. If you're calling in to listen to the webinar, we recommend that you try to avoid using a mobile phone. Sometimes using a mobile phone can diminish the sound quality of the call. So if you have a landline available, use it. Feel free to submit your questions down in the chat box at any time. Either myself or Connie will answer them at the end of the presentation. Unless it's something that needs to be addressed immediately, like an audio issue, then we will get right on it. If the slides are not syncing correctly, or if you're having audio problems, simply closing and reopening the webinar window will usually fix that problem. Just so you know, this webinar is being recorded. Please remember to keep your phones on mute. And everyone will receive an email link to the webinar within 24 or 48 hours. After the presentation, you're also going to receive a short online survey to evaluate today's session. We encourage you to participate in that survey so that we can do a good job of planning future webinars. With that, today's webinar, titled Effective Collections Techniques for the Non-Collector, Tips for Increasing Patient Collections at the Front Desk, will feature PPS Administrator Council Chair Connie Ziccarelli. Connie is the co-founder and COO of Rehab Management Solutions, bringing 30 years of experience in owning, operating, and managing outpatient private practices specializing in physical and occupational therapy. Connie holds professional membership in APTA's private practice section. You all know she serves as chair of the Administrators Council, as well as Wisconsin Medical Group Management Association. Connie is a model of her teaching as she champions a strong focus on patient relationship management, motivates clinical staff to be patient advocates, and protects all components of the clinic's revenue cycle. She speaks at local, state, and national platforms, as well as being a published author of articles on topics related to best clinical and administrative practices for successful reimbursement strategies in private practice settings. Connie's expertise and experience, combined with her passion to teach and implement proven operations and systems, allows private practice providers the peace of mind to focus their practice on their patients while enjoying the revenue of their work. With that, I am going to turn the time over to Connie.
Marisa, after that, I don't know if we have any more time.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here today. I know that all of us on the call here experience the opportunity to work with patients each and every day on their repayment process with the practice. So I thought we would take some time today to just talk about some ways that I have found helpful in asking patients for money, increasing revenue at the time of service, and all in all, engaging the entire practice with the discipline of getting patients or having patients repay for their services in a timely manner. You know, the front desk is a very, very busy place. My clinic can have 3 or 4 or 5 different conversations going on at the same time. And each one of those conversations are important to the guest experience. So how do we make sure that, you know, our patients are welcomed and they're taken care of and they feel like this is a place of healing, while at the same time balancing that this is a service and these visits or these services need to be paid. So how do we do that? So today we'll talk about some experiences I've had. I'll give you some tips of what has worked and what I have seen work. And then the 3 T's, what I teach every day about just remember 3 words when it comes to any kind of collections, whether that be at the front desk or that's making patient phone calls and following up after that statement comes out.
Hey, Connie, can I interrupt you for just a second? I just want to give a reminder for everybody to put your phones on mute. We're hearing a little bit of background from some of the participants at this time. Thanks.
Perfect. Keep us on that. If you need to interrupt, that was a great way to join in. Thank you.
Okay, great.
So again, the front desk is a very, very busy place. Lots of things happening. But at the end of the day, healthcare costs are being shifted to patients, and patients are walking in with deductibles and co-pays larger than I've ever seen before. I had a patient just this morning have a $75 copay per visit. And that patient right now is a wound care patient, and they're coming in 5 times a week. It was a challenge to have that discussion to say, you know, it's unfortunately this is what your plan says, and this is what it's going to be for the next week of your care here. So as we are having patients come in with large deductibles, with large co-pays, how are we going to navigate through that? Well, the front desk is the front line. And, you know, there's things that we should think about when it comes to the front desk of maybe segregating some plates off the desk that we do our financial talking, that it's not, you know, very casual, that it's more of a counseling area. That front desk could be seen as, you know, not private enough to have those discussions. So as you as you go back to your practice and take a peek at your front desk, you know, maybe sit in that front waiting room for a minute and listen to your front desk and find out what's happening. What are the conversations going on at the front desk? And you may find that those conversations that are more financial or going over their insurance benefits may be done at a different place other than that front high traffic area. Front desk coordinators are you know, your front desk team, I call them front desk coordinators, are juggling phones, are juggling patients, are juggling therapists needing things. So to increase revenue at the front desk, really listen to your area and make sure it's conducive to more sensitive kind of talks. with our patients. You know, one of the things that I've always said as well is that what gets measured gets results. So if you're watching the collection rate at the front desk, and you know what that looks like, what should come in, and then what does come in, that also gives you a feel of if you need to get a little bit stronger with your front desk collections or get a little bit more aggressive, so to speak, with making sure patients are paying at the time of service. In my practice, the benchmark is 92%. So I know every morning what is expected to be collected for the day, and the next day or at the end of the day when I balance, I look at did we meet that expectation by at least 92%. And if we didn't, then we go back and find out what were the reasons that we did not hit that benchmark and try to hammer out solutions for those reasons so that going forward we are hitting that benchmark. Again, it's very important to establish the rules of repayment when patients come into the practice. One of the things that I like to do is give the patient their insurance benefits on the first visit in writing. Now, not that that is a guarantee of payment, but it starts laying the foundation that repayment is expected and a timeline of which it's expected. I call it the financial plan of care. As your therapists are putting together the clinical plan of care, the administration team can be putting together their financial plan of care. And when you present it to patients like that, they understand that this is going to be a process, that we're going to bill the insurance, and that at the end of the day, there could be some money left over. Or there could be a copay due at every visit. So you want to start having that conversation super early in the relationship to vet out if there are any problems with that repayment. I would rather know that a patient has a problem. For example, my patient this morning, $75 copay per visit, and for the next 5 days, they need to come daily. So I want to know early on if there's going to be a problem with that, versus not knowing, and now I'm chasing the patient 3 and 4 statements down the road. So putting that financial plan of care together and putting that program in place early mitigates the risk down the line. The front desk team are the eyes and the ears of the practice. They're going to hear, again, the comings and goings. They're going to know if patients are complaining that things are not running smoothly or that they can't make their next visit because they can't afford their copay. Those kind of things, those kind of discussions should be taken very seriously, and the front desk, front line should be reporting that so that together with the therapist, the patient, and the administrator team can come together for a solution so that patient keeps every visit that has been prescribed to them on their plan of care, on their clinical plan of care. And this is a very disciplined approach to the revenue cycle. I take the view that patients walking in the door is not an insurance issue. I take the view that it is a patient issue. They just happen to pull an insurance card to pay the bulk of the money, to pay the bulk of the visits. But in the end, if that insurance card doesn't work, it's their balance. So I like my therapist, I like my front desk team, all to be under the discipline that when the patient walks through the door and they register for their visit, that nothing happens clinically until they understand how the repayment process is going to happen. Empower your patient, put it in writing, and remind the patient at every visit what that repayment schedule is. One of the things that I find to be super helpful is on that first visit to not only go over their benefits. Some of you may have a welcome packet like I do.
Webinar, I didn't know I had participated. Did you know about this?
Marisa, could you?
Hi. Can everybody please make sure that your phones are on mute?
I think somebody just joined us that's on a webinar. Anyway, so yeah, just put everything on mute. Where was I? So I have a welcome packet. And in my welcome packet, not only do I have my insurance benefits in there for the patient, I also have a copy of the statement that they're going to get in their mail. And I go over that statement. What's it going to look like? What's going to be their responsibility column? And what my timeline is for repayment. I always send my statements out the first of the month, I tell my patients, and that we like to have payments by the 26th of the month before the next cycle happens. So if you sit down with your patient and their welcome packet, and you may want to include this part of the discussion, you may find greater repayment off of your statement processes. So managing it from the beginning will help the revenue cycle in the end. One of the other things that I do training on is working with front desk team, I call them front desk coordinators, that are very customer service oriented. They are the bounciest and the friendliest members on the team. They are part of the team that goes the extra length for the patient to make sure that they're comfortable. They've got everything they need to be set up for success. They help the patient on where to park. They help the patient for where to go for coffee. They even get the coffee for the patient. The front desk team are ambassadors. They are outgoing, fun. Sometimes those wonderful qualities get a little bit dampened when they have to ask for money. That I have found has been some of the hardest transitions to do when they're in the middle of a busy front desk, making sure patients are comfortable. Now they have to stop. A lump gets in their throat, and they say, I've got to ask patients for money. They've got a $6,000 deductible. They've got $75 they have to pay every day. How do I ask for that? You know, that's some of the training I do, is how to get a front desk person, a front desk teammate who's not comfortable asking for money, to be very successful at this. And one of the ways I train, and one of the ways that I have given some encouragement, is that when you're working with patients and you're taking the time to go over their benefits, to do that, I said earlier, away from the front desk is sometimes the most comfortable. Maybe there's an area or a desk or a space you could sanction off to have these discussions. One of the things that I say is when you ask for money, you don't say anything after that and let the patient respond. There's an old adage that says, the first person to respond after you ask for money is the person that loses. So for example, when I'm training, I say, ask the patient for money. Madam X, your copay today will be $75. And after that, I say nothing. And I let the patient, through that little few moments of awkward silence, tell me how she's going to put a solution to that request. There are many ways that solution can happen. There are ways that are, cash, hand to hand. There are credit card solutions. There are ways of paying that maybe you haven't thought of yet. So let's walk through some of those solutions. Cash, check, easy. Patients pay that way. Credit cards, make sure that you can accept all credit cards. In my practices, I accept all credit cards, even American Express. One of the other solutions that I brought in was a solution I'm going to use their trademark name, but it's called Care Credit. It is a way for patients to qualify for small amounts of credit that go towards medical expenses. Easy application, easy to put in your practice. Google Care Credit.
Now unmuted.
Go on to carecredit.com. Great solution. I have found this to be a huge gap in my practice. It fills a huge gap. One of the other ways to get solutions for your patients are Can You Pay on your website. Again, that's a way you can get patients, instead of sending in money, they can just put their credit card over the internet through your web system. I have found that to be highly successful. When it comes to checks, if patients don't have a check on them, I have self-addressed stamped envelopes sitting at every front desk. And if a patient can't pay that day, or they have forgotten their checkbook, or they forgot their wallet, I simply hand them an envelope. It has a stamp on it, and I say, just drop it in the mail to me. So there are ways that you can work around patients' excuses. Do you do reminder calls? If you do reminder calls, remind them on the message that there is, copay due at the time of service. The more you empower the front desk team to know what that repayment solution should be, the more accountability you'll get from your patients. Patients are eager to pay once they know and have a plan. Offer partial payments. The $75 patient this morning, this patient couldn't do that for 5 days straight. So we broke it out over the course of his plan of care. So yes, is he going to be discharged with some balance? Absolutely. But I would rather have a little bit of something than a whole lot of nothing. So with that patient, I was able to work out a plan that would stretch it over the plan of care and hopefully work for his budget, and also then I don't have to be billing patients for copays. I don't really have a problem sending out statements for deductibles, but copays I do have a little bit of angst, because that is what is due at time of service, and it's part of the repayment we're going to get from that insurance carrier. So think about that when you're asking patients to pay. Ask them, pause. Let the patient make the first move of how they're going to solve this question. Then, with their answer, you have now some ideas of how to respond with repayment opportunities. Everything from self-addressed stamped envelopes to a possible care credit solution, which, again, I'm going to say it again, highly successful. Pay through your website. Make sure that all of those opportunities are also listed on your statement, so that if patients want to pay fast, when they open up their statement, they know where to go on your website to pay that. So the three P's, the three words I always remember and train, and I do collection calls myself. And the three words that I always remember are my three P's: professional, pleasant, and persistent. People don't like debt collectors. Debt collectors are scary. Debt collectors are the bad guy. So my team, my front desk team, my team that are on the phones making follow-up calls for patients are pleasant. We are nice. We are the nice team. We are the team that is there to put solutions in place. So professional. When you're making your outbound calls, when you're asking patients at the front desk, always remain professional. Professional word choices. This is not the time for slang. This is not the time for the buddy-buddy coffee shop way of talking to a person. This is a time to be professional and to state what needs to get done. which again is why I say look at your practice, listen to your practice. Do these conversations need to happen at a busy, friendly front desk? Should it be more segregated? When you're making your collection calls, do you do it in a private room where it's just you and the patient, so to speak, over the phone? Think about that. But professional is probably the number one P to remember. 2, pleasant. Does your patient see your smile? Can they see the smile when they're looking at you face to face? And can they see your smile when you're on the phone? Funny thing, when I have new members join my team and they become a part of my administrative collection team or my accounts receivable team, my billing team, whatever you call that section of the revenue cycle, for the first week I have them put a mirror at their desk so that when they are making their calls, they're kind of seeing themselves. Are they smiling? Are they engaged? Because you can hear that on the other side of the phone. If patients don't feel pleasant and they feel that this is a bad experience, they're not going to pick up your phone again. Caller ID is the best and it's the worst. The best because we know who's calling us. The worst, they're like, oh, there's that person again. They're calling me. So how do we sound? How are we working through that conversation both professionally and with a pleasant voice? Be a problem solver. Collections isn't about that dollar that is on the statement. The collection activity, as well mirroring with the clinical activity, is a problem-solving activity. The clinicians are problem-solving a diagnosis to health. The administrative team is problem-solving the reimbursement matrix to have the patient have a good billing experience, to be financially taken care of. So problem solve together. You do that in a pleasant voice. And then persistent. You know, the patients aren't going to remember they have to bring their copay every week. If we forget, then you know what? We dropped the ball. So persistent means in a pleasant, professional way, we keep saying the same thing. Every member of the team needs to be saying the same thing. From the clinical team to the support team that may pick up the phone or may do those dials every night to confirm patients' appointments, they need to have the same script, so to speak, and be persistent, as well as the team or the person that does the follow-up to the statements. It's got to be the same message, the same manner of speaking. Develop a culture of payment. That's a hard thing for clinicians, and all of us that are administrators kind of see that and understand that the therapist and the therapy team are caregivers first. They want to make sure that patient has the care to move through life feeling pain-free, solving that clinical issue. Well, that has to have a very good balance with a repayment discipline so that the practice stays healthy. So one of the ways I do that and bring everybody together is when I'm talking or having staff meetings or when we're sitting down visiting about how the practice is going, I always make sure there's time carved out for administrative ideas so that there is free and open discussion between the clinical team and the administrator team of what and how the practice is moving. So, for example, in my clinics, patients aren't taken back to see the therapist until the bookkeeping is done. That's just a discipline. That's just the way it is. If the front desk is backed up a couple patients, that still waits until the bookkeeping is done or the front desk coordinator has released the patient. So if you put that kind of discipline in, you're going to have a front line that's protecting that patient path or that revenue path, that part of the revenue cycle. So think about that when it comes to your practice. Do you have an open communication between clinical and administrative when it comes to these kind of topics? Do you have a way that you could role play? Do you have a way that maybe there are systems in place or policies or procedures in place that patients take care of that financial side before they go back to the floor? Something to think about. But I encourage you, go out to the front area of your practice. Sit there with a cup of coffee, Diet Coke, and listen to your front desk for a few minutes and see what you hear. See if there's ways that you can train, that you can use more professional speak. Maybe there is a segregated area you have to come up with in your practice. But this is a large part of the revenue cycle. And it's not just collecting $50 today. It's putting the whole theory in play of how you train your front staff. You want those front staff to be happy, bubbly, outgoing, cheerful, welcoming, ambassadors. But they've got to be confident to ask for money, one of the skill sets. Is that happening? Are you comfortable with where that is? Number two, is your clinical team respectful that those kind of discussions have to happen before today's visit goes on or before the visit goes on? Make sure you're comfortable with that. If that's in place, jackpot. You've got a disciplined, well-organized team that respects both boundaries. Patient collections or money that is patients are going to be responsible for is not going away. In fact, it is increasing, and it's staggering how much it's increasing. It is a way of shifting costs. And when they shift costs to patients, patients don't have those kind of resources. They're going to need help. How are we there to problem solve? How are we there to give them opportunities to be a part of the creation of the solution? So think about that. Today is just kind of a discussion and a smorgasbord of some things that I do, some things over the years that I have found. I do a lot of training. I train collections. I train front desk. We work on different areas of the revenue cycle so that the practice feels the end result of a healthy bottom line. Please take some time to put some energy into this and see if there's one or two things you can implement that may help. And if it helps, please email me. My contact is all over. Email me because I want to learn from you. What are some things that you have put in place that has increased this facet of the revenue cycle? Very excited about that and very excited to meet each and every one of you at annual conference this year. We're going to have several more web events throughout this year, so please keep looking for that to come out, getting your newsletter. Part of the Administrative Council is some amazing opportunities to network and socialize over social media. I would love to hear from you through social media. So I hope today has been an opportunity to share some wisdom, share some tips and tricks. I know it was fast. You've got the handouts. If you have any questions at all, please put it in the chat box. And let's open the doors up for the next few minutes to some networks and some questions and answers. And Marisa, I will let you take that over while I catch my breath and get a drink of water.
Okay, sounds good. Does anybody have any questions? We do have one question in the chat box, Connie. I'm not sure if you already answered it. Katie asked if your clinic was in network or out of network.
Hi, Katie. Yes and no. I am in network with all the PPOs and insurances in my area, but there are some that I've made a choice to not be in network with So in that case, I'm not, but for the most part, I am a in-network provider for many of the plans in my area. Does that answer your question, Katie? Or is there a reason, or your yes, thank you. Wonderful, wonderful.
Does anybody else have any other questions today?
Well, I hope that you've even...
coming.
Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Sorry, I just saw that somebody was typing, but they said that this was a great webinar and thank you.
Oh, good. That's great feedback. Yeah, and if anybody has anything that they want to talk offline, I think my contact information is here at the end. If not, oh, there it is. And if not, you can, always find me through the PPS.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. I apologize for the audio issues at the beginning. We figured out what the issue was, and you shouldn't run into that again. So on the next webinar, we look forward to having you with us. We've recorded this event. It will be emailed to you, and it will be available on the Administrator Council's page of the PPS website. So you'll receive that information. Also, we do have a survey coming out to you for you to give us some feedback about your experience with the webinar, both the content and the technical experience. We would appreciate your feedback on how that worked for you, okay? Looks like we've got one more person typing before we sign off.
You know what, and even if you want to leave this up for a little bit, Marisa, I'm sitting here, I'll do some paperwork and let a couple things come through. If anybody has any questions, I can even respond back.
Okay, wonderful. It looks like right here, Nancy said some insurances take 30 to 45 days. How do you deal with that?
Well, I'm going to answer it with what maybe a direction I think you're going, Nancy. So with your days outstanding, and we could do a whole discussion on the revenue cycle and days outstanding, but when it comes to your insurance payers, knowing proactively through the verification of benefits like you do for your patients tells you what is patient portion, what predicted patient portion, and predicted insurance reimbursement or insurance payment. I engage the patient in that talk really early so that I have them paying their copays while the insurance money is being processed at the insurance company. So hopefully through that 30 to 45 day practice, 30 to 45 day wait for insurance money, I have patients paying towards their portion while insurance is processing, if that's what you mean. So hard to do with deductible, hard to do with co-insurance, but for sure, co-pays can keep that account floating and keep that account current while you're waiting for insurance to pay, if that has addressed it.
Do you ever collect multiple days of copays up front?
The only time I collect multiple days is if I have to collect it in the rears. Here's why. If you collect for, let's say, 4 days a week or 3 times a week, and they don't show up, well, the patient has just paid for a visit, they don't show up, and if that patient never came back again, yeah, you kind of got extra money. You need to send that back to the patient. But if the patient says, I can't pay today, may I make it up next week, or next visit, then on that visit I would collect 2 copays. So I never collect into the future, but I always, at the end of the week, make sure I've caught up all my copays for the week.
Great. Christina says, we do an estimate of payment due by insurance company and share that with the patients to make payments toward their account.
So do I, Christine. Nice work. That's exactly the way I do it. I have found that patients are more engaged that way. I like when it's overstated so that it's less than what they are expecting. I like that when that happens, but I do the same thing. I kind of guesstimate to the best of my ability so that they can put their financial budget together at their family table. So I do the same thing. think Tanya does the same thing too, so that's a high five. Tanya says that Christine, our office, does the same thing as well. I don't know if the participants can see all the chat box, so I'm sorry if I am redundant there, but yeah, Tanya does that too.
Great.
So Nancy, you want to read Nancy's?
Yeah, so Nancy says we take more up front towards deduction, and then when it goes through the insurance, then we issue a statement with the balance due and try to collect at the next visit when they come in. Sometimes they will pay, sometimes they don't.
You know, that is a really good behavior. The only thing I will caution with that is that when it comes to collecting a deductible proactively, some contracts state in the contract that you cannot bill a patient until the insurance has made payment. Copay is a different issue, but co-insurance and deductible, make sure with each contract or payer you're doing this with that you're not violating your contract language. I have ran into some payers that will not let me pre-collect until they make their first determination of the claim and how they're going to adjudicate it. So just make sure of that, but otherwise, love the discipline and love the proactiveness.
All right, guys, you're free to sign off at any time. We can keep this discussion going for a little bit if Connie has some time. I see a few more things coming through the chat box, but the rest of you, if you don't have any other questions, we appreciate your time and we look forward to seeing you at conference.
And we do have some chats going on. I have until 2 o'clock, so I have like 5 more minutes. And there are some questions coming through that, Marisa, if you have to move on, that's fine, or if you want to stay on with me.